And you did film school in LA, or?
I went to USC, yeah.
Yeah.
So LA, and I met a lot of really great people there. I definitely owe it to film school to having the community of people that I had.
Sure.
Not much else.
I mean, that's the question too. Like, I feel like there's a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of like anti-film school, camp of people versus like, I mean, like, do you think it was really beneficial because of the network and the people you kind of came up with?
I don't like answering whether or not film school is for you or not for you, only because I think it's about expectations.
Sure.
You think about what film school can offer. And for me, I went into it with kind of a naive mindset at the time. I was very much a gearhead. I was thinking about cameras. I was thinking about like, oh man, they're going to have gear like, we're going to have Alexas and Reds and film cameras and all that jazz. And they'll have sound stages and, fancy lights for us to play with. Yes and no, because the truth is it's not really about the gear. And even if it was, then the ultimate value that you get out of film school, depending on which one you go to, is really about the people that you meet there and the collaborators that you're going to become, that are going to become your future collaborators for years to come. So you have this dream of going into film school thinking like, I'm going to exit film school with a portfolio of work that's going to get me on the next big, Marvel movie or something like that. But in reality, nobody jumps into a community or a you don't jump into a new like tier of filmmakers. You stay in the tier of filmmakers that you have created, the community that you have formed at film school, and you grow together. So, if your expectation going to film school is, I'm going to find a community of people, of like-minded individuals, then maybe that is right for you. And you can't access that kind of community elsewhere, then yeah, that might be worth it. But if it's just solely like gear or like access to like, certain networking things. I don't know. It's definitely dependent on where you go. It's definitely dependent on what kind of film school, but what's not dependent on which film school is the fact that you are going to be surrounded by like-minded individuals. And if that's worth it for you, then that's worth it. But if you can find that elsewhere, I mean, you can learn a lot of things online now.
Yeah.
Like you can learn so much of the craft of filmmaking from the internet, and you get that for free. But what you can't get is the trust that you have from a fellow collaborator.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, I think, I was just going to say, I do agree, because like when going into film school, if you're not really pushing, if you're not someone who likes to work with others, or, like making use of that community and like, I don't know, really just like I've went to film school for a minute, and you see some people who don't really want to be a part of that community or just go off and do things themselves. I feel like they're really not utilizing the main purpose of film school, which is really making connections and being with your peers,
and not thinking that connections are these lofty, like out of reach people. It's really the people that you're surrounded by, and the friends that you make along the way, and the connections that those form. Because fresh out of film school, I think most, if not all, my jobs were just born out of people that I met who were close friends of mine that were collaborators in and out of film school, and then B, it was people that they recommended me to, and it was always like a tangential like relationship from those that I met there.
Yeah, I guess going back to your story, so you went to USC, and then you came out and you were working as a cinematographer. Like, how did you get those first jobs, or was cinematography like the main position you knew you wanted to get into when you first?
I definitely wanted to tell my own stories, but I think that fresh out of film school, it's very easy to sell yourself if you have a hard skill, something that people need always, and the job is already going to exist. The projects are out there, and as a DP, you kind of jump onto a train that's already moving with a project, and if you have a look, if you have something to say visually, then people will recognize that and they'll be able to kind of see their movie in your reel or in your work and look for a way of collaborating with you in that way. So I met a lot of people at film school that I continued shooting movies for, and there was a slew of directors who would consistently hire me as, I guess, I was their main DP. And I think that was like a really fruitful time for me as a cinematographer, because I think the barometer for whether or not you're being successful as a cinematographer is if you can confidently say that you have like at least 3 or 4 directors who will always reach out to you first.
And did you meet these guys through school too, or?
Most of them were from school, and eventually they branched off into those that I've met either through recommendation or somebody reaching out because they saw my work. And it's mostly through referrals.
Yeah.
Very rarely would those kinds of relationships form based off of somebody who just blindly saw my work over the internet. It was usually a recommendation.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's interesting because I feel like LA specifically is such a competitive like place for cinematography as well. Because I remember when I first moved here, like it was so hard to get jobs. Like I'll go on like Facebook, like I don't know, groups or answer, I don't know, even Craigslist ads and stuff for like people looking for DPs and stuff. And like in the Facebook like comments and stuff, you'll see people just throwing in their reels and everybody's just so good, right? So like, and it's interesting now, even like now, like most of the directors that I work with are like people from the Bay Area too. Like it's like connections that I've had, and like I guess word of mouth, like connections through other connections and stuff. And it's, yeah, I feel like just the value of just connections in your network is definitely really important.
And people aren't hiring DPs not just because they see a really good reel. They're hiring a DP because they know that they can trust that this person's going to be fun to work with or a good collaborator or is going to like allow me to do my job the way that I want to do my job. So I think that's why referrals are so important. And, you know, any job that you're doing, you know, no matter how small, being somebody who is pleasant to work with is so important.
I think that's definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so from you're doing cinematography out of school, so from there to Kodama, what's the story there?
There's a big jump there because honestly, I was very set on being a cinematographer for life, basically, for a while. And I think that was a big goal of mine. I was checking off all these boxes as far as DP, like, milestones go, like, work with this kind of company, work with techno cranes consistently, use, like, Panavision glass or something like that, you know, like, all those kind of surface level milestones or check marks that you can kind of, like, show off in a sense, but also kind of surface level in that it doesn't really mean anything beyond like, oh, I did that thing. You know, when it became really apparent to me that maybe my mindset could have been more suited for like, oh, I should be thinking more about what I'm making each time. Like I definitely felt very confident in like being a chameleon as a DP, finding the vision of the director, trying to interpret what the director is trying to do in a visual standpoint. But I guess curating the stories that I attached myself to was not apparent to me at the time. I would shoot anything and everything. And there was definitely a look that I was after, you know, each time. But the consistency of like curating like the kind of movies I would attach myself to.
I guess for our audience who don't, I guess a lot of people haven't like seen Kodama because it's not public right now.
Right.
Maybe kind of give a brief intro on what Kodama is.
Kodama is a SWAT samurai action film that follows this guy named Arthur, who is a new elite SWAT samurai going in to rescue his father from evil Japanese folklore spirits, or vengeful Japanese folklore spirits. And It was a concept that was born out of me wanting to dive into Japanese folklore, an interest in samurai films, and also at the time I was kind of going through a shift in like how I saw my parents and the way that kind of dynamic changes as you grow older and like learn about like how to see your parents as peers and less so as like, you know, the adults in your life. And I felt like that was a story that I really wanted to tell and cram it into an action Japanese folklore action thriller.
But originally, so you made this so you can DP something like fully your style, fully the stuff that you want to do, and kind of just show people what you can do. Essentially.
Yeah.
Like directing wasn't really even your goal at that time.
Yeah, no, actually, that's a good point. I feel like a lot of the stuff that I was shooting at the time, I take great pride in, but I also recognize there was a lot of things that I personally desired to be shooting. I hadn't gotten a chance to do like a hard-hitting action film, and that was something that was a big desire of mine. I wanted to do something that was also like showcasing action in a beautiful light. You know, like the wire work that we see in Chinese kung fu movies, and but also like simultaneously like the tactical like choreography of those in like Sicario or even The Raid. And I thought those were movies that I just didn't have any collaborators that were interested in making that kind of stuff. And it felt like the only way I was going to be able to shoot that kind of stuff was to make it myself. And yeah, that's how the intention began. And then the further I, you know, immersed myself in the world, the further I immersed myself in the ideas and the ideals that I wanted to pull across on the screen, the more I was like, okay, I really need to tell this not just as like a project that I'm just going to shoot. It has to be a film that stands on its two legs. It's not just like a cinematography reel. It's not some sort of like piece that I'm going to showcase for like, but at the time I didn't know that. I just instinctually was like, okay, I'm going to make this thing. I want to make something that's fully me. How I'm going to release this, how people see it, I'm not even going to think about that right now. I just know that it's going to come out at some point, and I'll figure it out once I'm done and I have the thing in my hands, you know?
Yeah.